jump back in? Okay, so one other thing I want to show you in Photoshop before we end is on this right hand side, you see this thing that says layers. It's a little tab right here. So you'll find as we go through Adobe software that the dashboard is very similar, although Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign are all used for three very separate things. There's consistencies within the way it's set up. So layers allowed you to actually build the document up. So if you guys click on a new layer, you'll see it kind of has this checkerboard background, which means transparent. So if I'm actually on that layer, I can create something on that layer that lives on top of the image, but not necessarily is the image. So I think what I'm going to do is come over to my toolbar over here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to grab a shape, the ellipse tool. So I can create a circle right now that lives of any size, that lives on this other layer. Oh, sorry, it's actually creating additional layers. So these all are living on additional layers. You guys see that?
So you change colors? You can't change colors?
You can change colors, sure. That was my next thing I wanted to share with you. Down here on the left-hand corner, if I wanted to... Huh? I'll come over and help you in just a moment. If I wanted to do a red circle, I would come over. I'm on grayscale right now, so I would have to change the mode of it. Right now, everything is black and white. So if I went up to image, mode, and then took it back to RGB color, it's going to flatten my image, which means all the layers are going to become one. But I can then now create with color again. So this is just, again, getting a little bit more advanced. I could also turn off these layers so you don't see them. I can also rename them, so if I wanted to manipulate them, the way you do that is to click on it. Sorry, right click. There should be a rename area. Or double click. You can call it red circle 1. Red circle 2. And that way I know which ones are which, and I'm able to turn them on and off if I want to. Now, if you save it as a Photoshop file, all of the layers still exist, so you can open it anytime and deal with the layers individually. You can also create like type on them, or you can bring in another image in and work with that on top of it. But if you keep it as a Photoshop file, all of the layers will save in it. If you save it as a JPEG, they will compress and it will become one flat file. Does that make sense?
What if you flatten it and save it as a Photoshop file?
It's still, if you flatten it, it's still a flat file.
Oh, so you won't be able to see the visual?
No, once you flatten it, all the layers are gone.
It's weird. I chose the color, but when I do the layers, it's still black.
Are you still on black and white?
No, I changed it.
You went back?
I think I changed it to color already.
Okay.
And now,
Okay.
I do still black.
Oh, because it's black. Okay, so that's another thing. So this is your outline color, and that's your fill. So, let's try something else. Let's take off this. Let's go back.
I used to.
Oh, you know what? I wonder, let's get rid of these. So if you wanted to delete it, you just hit the trash can down there. It's definitely on RGB color. I'm going to actually, so we have something called swatches, right? Double click on this. And so see if that has something to do with it. Shift to 2, it becomes a proportionate yellow circle. There you go.
So what happened?
I think it was just, we had to get, sometimes they're just acting funky. We had to get rid of the other layers and then make sure it was all converted. So if you wanted to do lots of little bubbles, they all go. These are all on the same layer. See?
Same layer.
So now if you wanted to get rid of them, you could also go back to here.
But then I don't understand why when you do it on the same layer. But
Well, it depends. So if you wanted to start a new layer, so you start, this is going on a new layer.
oh no, why is
It's okay. So then if you wanted to start a new one, you just click down there. And then see this one? That means new.
yeah, but if I don't have any layer like just now, there actually won't be any layers on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's we can just delete all.
Yeah, you can delete them all.
So just now when I try on myself, I said this,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I add this, it won't have a layer, it's just on this.
Well, that created a new layer, but if you keep on adding, it will add to that layer. Oh, so that time it went to a new one.
So why? How
It's because you were clicked on this layer before. See? I'm not sure why it's doing that for you. It's going back and forth between it. So things depends on if you start with a new layer or if you just go off the new one. Now, if you wanted to merge these two together, let me show you something. You hit shift so they're both highlighted. And then you could merge shapes. See? Now they're both on the same.
Yeah, but what if I don't want any layer?
You just get rid of, oh, you want to just put it right on here? Right on the face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you put them on there. Now you're going to shift, okay? So that both of them are highlighted, and then do merge layers, or merge visible, because those are the two ones that are visible. Does that make sense? We want to make some layers?
No, we just blank.
Let me show you. So you're going to click right here. You're going to come
How
over,
is it to click over there? That's what I'm choice.
yeah, and then you're going to come over here to ellipse tool. And you see it, you can make circles. It's just playing with it a little bit.
Can you play with this circles like pull up?
What's there?
Is it possible you can play with the circles like
Oh, there's a transform. You just have to explore this a little bit more. So if you're on here, you're able to,
select down the way you can put like someone's head?
yeah. You can do, so now these are all, because they're on the same layer, you'd have to transform them as a group. See? Okay. So that's just a little bit more about Photoshop. So let's go ahead and click out. If you want to get rid of your layers and just have your background, maybe just hold on to that. I have saved mine as a PSD on my desktop. And the next thing I'm going to do is open up Illustrator. Yeah, sure. No, ask as many questions as you want.
I still having trouble change colors. Like I want to change to pink, see it says pink, but for the
I don't know
bubbles.
what's going on with your computer. It seems to be glitching out a little bit. So, I know, it doesn't want you to learn. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So what I did was I made a new layer. I started on a new layer because right now these were picking up qualities from the previous layers. So if I was to click out of this, I'm gonna do this guy. Okay. I just created a new layer and started a new circle.
So if in this layer,
So if you find that you're having issues on a layer, it might give you more properties from it. This is also a older version of Photoshop, so it could be wrong on why it's
so
glitchy.
you don't have to delete this circle within the layer, but I'll still want the
Well,
layer to be there.
you still want the layer to be there, so you can go to image. Sorry. There's one. So it highlights it, and you can this layer. You can erase it, so you can come down here to the eraser tool, which doesn't look like it's going to allow you to on this circle. Let's do shapes now. There. Erase it.
So eventually, how did you manage to get it?
Because it rasterized the image, so what I did was I went to this yellow one, right? So once this yellow one's turned on, and I decided I wanted to erase it. So I double clicked it and it says, should I rasterize the shape? I said, sure. And now I can go over it and get rid of it.
I see. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we want to open up Illustrator. That's the next one. So Illustrator is mostly for creating typography, or it's for working with logos, or for vector graphics. Does anybody know what a vector is?
Like in
What is
mathematics?
it?
Sure. I don't know. So you don't have to tell me what a vector is. I'm not a
I think
vector.
vector is line of direction.
Yeah. Sure. So very similar to what you're talking about, but it's a shape that is made up of points that is able to be scaled up and down. So the image has like ultimate kind of width in terms of and malleability. So if we would like to all open up a new document, and I'm just going to name this test 2. So I feel like here is really where you can create from scratch or bring items in to manipulate to become vectors. So the toolbar I think is really important here. This is where I develop most of my typography. If you guys go over to the type tool and create a text box, I'm just going to write boot camp. And I'm going to highlight it. On top, you'll have your font library where I'm going to choose a font of my choosing. I'm going to choose Goudy Old Style because that's what I letterpressed my wedding invitations with. And then I'm going to make it much larger. I'm going to make it actually take up the whole top of my screen. So if you guys want to create, so you want to use the type right here? And then create something you want to, and then from there you can use the character bar. So if you go to, but you're in Photoshop still, so
So we changed the program already?
yeah, we're going to Illustrator. It's okay, you'll have plenty of time to work. We're gonna do
Illustrator research.
yeah, we're gonna do a project. So right now it's a brief introduction to them, and yeah, just say sign in. Oh no, sign in now. Oh, okay, sign in language fine too. Cool. So this is a great program to actually experiment with type with. I find that I spend a lot of time in here kind of ideating about what typefaces I want to use. I might develop my my color palette in here as well, or create like a logo for my piece, my presentation for this. So if I decide that I want to go with this Gaudi old style, and I'm going to create kind of like a logo mark for that. There is a number of tools here on my left-hand side that I can work with in order to develop something kind of special. We have a pen tool, which is also something that's available in Photoshop. In Illustrator, we're making vector images with it. Something that you can do is create objects with this vector pen tool. So you'll note that after you make an object, you're able to scale up and scale down. So just try making a shape of any sort.
Where's the text?
So you want to,
Use a pen.
I think you're on cap locks, that's why it's doing that. If you see like a X ever, it's because you're on cap locks. Yeah, so there you go. So you can delete that because you already closed your shape. So you can just simply make a shape of any sort. Okay, so pen tool. I need the text tools first right here. And again, you guys have another page where if you wanted to write next to the toolbars what they are.
What was the first one?
So you're going to use the pen tool to create a vector shape. So that's a pen. And just create any sort of shape. And then if you wanted to change the color of that, same as in Photoshop, you just come down here and click on here to access your color palette, or up here, do you see that little swatch symbol? I can change the color just by merely clicking on any of these swatches.
I actually have no idea what is the pen doing here.
It can be out of control. Oh, but you're making beautiful objects. It looks like you have a Picasso happening here. So you want to try to close up whatever you create. So right now this is all open. So if you delete it all, you can go, you want to close the object with the pen. Or you can do multiple ones. And then give it a shot working with the color.
So how to close it?
Just actually close it like you would close a normal shape. See? It's just going back to the original. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
So it has to be like straight line?
No, it doesn't have to be. If you notice,
previously I seem to have a curve.
yeah, so you can go, if you wanted a curve, go back to the pen tool. You can, now I'm holding it down. Yeah, there you go. Pretty cool, huh? So now that's my closed shape. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to choose red for Rutgers. I'm going to have this kind of bleed off the sheet a little bit. I'm going to put the B on top of this. I'm going to change the color of this B only to white so it sticks up. smaller. So I'm just like playing with color and type and shape at this point. If you go down a little bit after your pen tool and your type tool, you have your line segment, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a line. Oops. Sorry, I'm making a mess here. Underneath there, you have your different shapes, which you can make squares. Click on colors as you're doing it. You can make a rounded rectangle. An ellipse, which is a fancy word for a circle. A star. So just experiment a little bit, take a few minutes, experiment with the line tool, experiment with some of these shapes, experiment with your existing text. Similarly to Photoshop, there is also a paintbrush, a pen tool, an eraser. These all do exactly what they say they do. So if you want to scribble around with the pen tool a little bit or the brush tool, the way that you can work on the actual thickness of the line is if you, like if I was to use the pen, and again, these are all vectors, note the dots, is that you come up to the stroke button up on the top. And I can change the color, I can make it have a fill, I can take off the fill. And I'll come around and kind of show you guys these tools individually. Just take a few minutes and really experiment with that toolbar.
How to make it
My pen made a mess, like just.
Whoa, that's your eraser.
I'm trying to use the eraser to clean the mess.
Well, you see, this is all a vector, so you can just click on this and get rid of it. You see? If you wanted to.
Yeah, what do you do?
I just took a regular arrow, I just highlighted and deleted it because these are all vectors. So these are all individual shapes.
Okay, use that too.
Okay,
I'm
so,
trying to make it like this so that B can show.
okay, so now it's in front of it, so you just want to make an arrangement. So you want to go to Object, Arrange, send it back.
Yeah, but is it possible to tell it's only a frame field, but the actual field is blank?
The actual B is blank?
No, I mean
Oh, so right now, I believe we have like a gray. If you come up here and press white, like that.
no, like object. You think that's what you just do, right? So I still move to front, but can we make the field like transparent?
Oh, yes. So if you come over here, just click on that little thingy and it means
No field.
no fill. Exactly.
I'm trying to.
So it works out. Yeah, so just spend like, I think maybe let's spend, the next 5 or so minutes just playing with these tools.
I don't know is how to rotate this shape so it has
Same way that it feels like you would. You come up here and just go. Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah, I think object arrange and receiving that is not.
Because you are outside of the document right now. You see how everything was muted color before, and I can write this out. Object, arrange, send. There we go.
I just look it.
No, it's because you were at so you had like double clicked on that.
Yeah.
See how that is all blanked out? It's because it's only the object is looking, so I just double clicked on that.
So I'm just working and then to go there for this can say back for.
Yeah, perfect. Now try to front. Perfect.
Yeah.
You got it. Cool, you have a great designer. You have to be. There's a color palette in line. Looks great.
Thanks.
Did you have any questions about any of the tools?
Do you have to click on an run it again for it to complete?
No,
Yes.
so you close it to complete, so, you guys come back here.
Is this
So
like a tool
here,
that could be
that
go
closes
up
it.
with this? Do you think it is?
Now I wanted to
You see like in
reactivate
one,
it. You can see this is
you can
not
go to the
closed. So you probably have to close it to click out of it.
You
Say
Like go
this
button.
one. The only thing that
Yeah,
affects
like,
is the
you see
fill.
like,
What way the fill goes, obviously, if you close it, the
You
fill
can't
is
like
in the
that.
interior, but
if
alternatively,
you're
if you
gonna
don't
take it
close it,
back, you know, like you
it might not
want
be.
to delete a
It could be
document,
like any kind
delete a
of stuff, like
sentence.
in here,
You
and
can
then
retrieve
right
it.
there.
Yes.
But, I mean, that's the only reason why it might be an
I don't
issue.
think it is. No.
Oh, cool, the gradient looks great.
So he was asking, can you retrieve where delete?
Yeah, like did you see like in one document where
Yeah,
you delete a
so,
word, you can go back.
yeah, that's like a technique that Photoshop, that's like a Photoshop specific thing. But what you can do is come over here where it says edit, and you can go unclear. You can also, a shortcut is Control Z. If you want to go back,
Control Z.
yeah, Control Z. So, guys, shortcut, if you wanted to just take a step back, say, I move this up here and I hate it. I press Control Z, it moves it back to where it is. It's just a little shortcut. It's kind of like Control C, Control V, which is applicable like across the board. Control Z is kind of like a step back. What's it? Yes, that's yours. And this is that's your Photoshop dashboard, and then this is your Illustrator dashboard. So anything you want to add next to it, you're more than welcome to.
I wish I would have stayed longer.
Yeah, it's a short session. Oh, you're reading it? Okay, no problem. Good luck today. Okay, so one thing I also want to share with you guys, so if you wanted to bring in an image from Photoshop as a background, you could. The way that you could do it is if I wanted to bring in that image that I created before, I'm going to go to File, instead of Open, because what would that do if I pressed Open?
You have to open a new file?
It would open the new file in a new tab. It wouldn't be part of the same one. So I would go to Place, if you guys want to write that in your notes. And I'm going to go to my desktop, into my test, and I'm going to take my PSD modified piece and bring it in. So now I have my image on the same document, my image from Photoshop that I made on the same document as I'm making right now. I can work with the size by just pulling on the corners. I would always press Shift while you're pulling so it's done proportionately. If you guys can see, I'm pressing Shift while I'm pulling this.
My file just disappeared.
Okay, I'll come over. And then I'm just going to send this to the back. Range.
So I did place the Facebook one, but then the first bootcamp.
Oh, this is your boot camp one? Okay, so it's behind it. So we're going to press Object, Range, send that. There you go. So now and then if you want to make it smaller, you just Shift. Oops. So obviously right now, things are on top of other things. So if you want to move them around so that they make more sense and kind of continue to collage.
But then this size, so I should, if I want to model it, include this.
That's only,
But then it all together.
okay, no,
Okay,
that's
I
only
see.
because it's only larger on the, that's your screen. You can do this in any program where you go up and down. Yeah, so, what just happened? Where are we? We lost us. Yeah, so that's just enables you to zoom in and zoom out, and that's applicable across the board. You can use that in Microsoft or PowerPoint or anything like that. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to make these into these parts into vectors. I'll show them up on the top, but if you click Image Trace, okay, you notice how it just became darker and like thicker?
Yeah.
And then click Expand. You notice how these are all their own dots now. I'm going to show it on the big screen in a second. Oops. And then if you click on the corner, you can get rid of these parts. So that now you have to have a vector image that you can scale accordingly. It's all same. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
How did you listen to that?
Okay, so you can go up to Object, Arrange, Select. VR. So just a few minutes to look at this right toolbar, and I think I'm just going to let you guys until 12 just play with this before we get into the last program and the quick assignment. So on this toolbar you have a number of things. You have your swatches so that you're able to, as you click on different things, change the color. This is your brushes, so if you click on your brushes you have the ability to have different types of strokes. These are also different stamps, and they go on with your brushes. This is pretty interesting, so your strokes. So if you have your line tool and you want to work with the stroke, you can click on this. You also have the ability to transform the line. You can put an arrowhead on it. You can change the type of line that it is. You can make it into a dashed line. Okay, there's a gradient tool, transparency. Notably this image is very saturated and dark. So if I wanted to pull down the transparency to like 40% so that boot camp was more prominent, I can do that. And then these are not really, you don't have to really worry about any of these. I think the ones above are the ones that maybe you can mess around a little bit with today. So yeah, just spend the next like 10 minutes just playing around with this program. I'll walk around, just getting kind of acquainted with the tools and what they do.
I try to make like a wave.
Yeah, cool. So it gives you brush options. InDesign is the third program, and we can use both of our skills that we've learned in Photoshop and Illustrator and integrate things that we've made, or we can develop solely in InDesign. InDesign is used for anything with lots of text. So for example, the PowerPoint that I showed you guys today, I call the PowerPoint, the presentation, this thing that I showed you guys today, this was all developed in InDesign. And I was able to create a lot of, for the principles of design, I was able to create each one of these little graphics inside InDesign because it is very similar to Illustrator in the sense that it has tools that you can manipulate and type can be manipulated. You're able to bring in PSDs the same way you would in Illustrator, but what it allows you to do to deal with large amounts of text in a way that is more proficient. So, if everybody could just open up an InDesign document, same way that you opened up the last two.
So that's the third.
The third software.
It's called design.
InDesign. And you want to create a new document.
What's the software?
InDesign. And we're going to create a tabloid because we're going to do a poster. So I'm going to come around and just show you guys really quickly. So you're going to get a tabloid right here.
Tablet.
Yeah, pencil letter. And one thing I'm going to click off is facing pages, and I'm going to show you guys why in a little bit. There you go.
So it's open up new file new and then document.
So right now it brings you up to the screen. It depends on what version of InDesign you're working on because they're all different. But you hit document, you're going to hit tabloid because we're going to do a poster. That's our project today. And you're going to click off facing pages. And there you go. So if you guys want to save the same way you would save any document, so it's in your test folder. So here's a really important thing that you guys should write down. The reason why I've had you guys keep everything in a folder called test folder is because with InDesign, you need to make sure that the files are all kept together. So if I was to open this and I did not have my image that's in the background, it wouldn't show up. So you need to keep your files all in a very organized way. Okay, so something I want to show you guys really quickly. When you go to new document, because this is set up for any sort of large text, it allows you to have multiple pages. So if everybody clicks on pages over here on your right-hand corner, you can see right now you have one page, right? Okay, if you were, same way that you would add layers, if you were to add multiple pages, you can see that mine are filing in kind of like a book, right? All right, so but yours aren't because you clicked no facing pages, right? Okay, so my document that I've already set up to show you guys the folder, I have not put facing pages, so now they kind of scroll in like multiple, like a poster series. So if you just take a moment and explore the dashboard, go through each of the select menu headings and just take a look at what there is here. Very similar to Illustrator and to Photoshop, you have this kind of heading bar that has your character settings. You can pick your type faces. You can pick the size of your type. There's also, because we're working within something that uses text, we're also looking at alignment tools so that you can set paragraphs the way that you want to. And then on your left-hand side, you have your arrows, you have the type tool, you have pens, boxes. So just take a few minutes and just look at everything. You don't have to touch anything yet, just look at them. Just to see what there is. And you'll see there's a lot of very similar things. These three programs work together. So very similar in terms of the actual program settings. Okay, so what I put together today was a poster that I created based off of our class. What are some things that we think are successful based on our conversations about content and how we organize it?
Well, you have a color scheme.
Yes.
Pink, yellow, blue.
Yes, going back to, actually, I pulled it from, let's get back to here. Surprise. So this is where it goes back to. So I spent some time, not too much time, but I spent a little bit of time obviously pulling together this presentation for you guys. So I decided that I wanted to work with the CMYK palette. I also thought I would implement some of the principles of design. So we have our title up at the top, which is Bootcamp for Graduate Student. And I put success in this like super bold and large placement with the yellow background. What is the principle of design that I'm employing? There's actually two. Emphasis is one of them. No, what did you say?
Visual hierarchy.
Well, no, that's definitely creating visual hierarchy because it's the first thing that you see. So if you see success, that's something that like gets you excited and drags you in. I'm sorry?
Is it proportion?
Proportion is another one. Obviously, the scale is much larger than anything, so it brings in your eye to it, creating visual hierarchy. The second thing that we've brought in is the date and the location. The date is all in caps, kind of syncing with the type on the top, noting that it is the next most important thing, and then the location is afterwards. The next thing is, if you don't want to read the type, there is, for more information or to sign up, there is a website that I created out of nowhere, and then there is a text area which just has dummy text in it, which would have a series of words or description about this program. So, how did I make this in this program? Well, the first thing is, if I click on this box right here, this is a new tool that you guys haven't seen in the last two softwares. It is similar to the place tool. If you guys go over to this button right here, actually I'm going to go to the other document. If you guys go up to, let me go back to page 1, get rid of all these other pages. So if you guys go up to this tool and make a box, okay? If you click Control D, that's the shortcut if you want to write it down. Basically like image place if you went to the menu bar. And then you want to click on your test folder. And I'm going to bring in my image. Cool. So the cool thing about this is because, again, this program is geared towards creating like these larger presentations with lots of information. You can click on this arrow and you have the ability to size or crop this however you want to. So you guys can fit it to the page where you feel necessary. Something else you can do, if you size this to the page, if you go up to Object, Fitting, fit content proportionally, it'll fit it to the image box. Another thing you can do is take the smaller white arrow and click on the image. If you press Shift, you're able to scale it the way you would like to. So now I have my image, which basically is taking up the entire artboard, the document spread. Similarly to what I did here, what do you guys think I did here to actually work with the image? There's clearly an effect or a transparency that has been implemented here. I brought the transparency all the way down. Just going to find where the transparency is in this older version of. If you ever do not see windows here, you can go up to Window and try to find it here. Here we go, effects. So my opacity for this is at 16%. This image, so that it kind of fades in the background. So I have this image that's presenting what I want to talk about, but it's in the back of the background and the opacity is brought down to 16%. Does that make sense? That's something, again, you can also do in any other program. Again, this is software that might take you time to get to know, but you can also develop something like this in a Word doc, and it might take you some time. It's certainly not as easy to make it, but you can definitely still have that effect on it. So other things that I did, I set text. This is just a text box, very similar to what we would do in Illustrator. This is just a yellow square that I pulled from the toolbar. So I would go down if I wanted to work with the fill. I would go to color, very similarly to Illustrator. These are just lines that if you go to stroke, you guys can see that there's different types of lines and thickness. This is just a very simple setup that I've done. And then down here, this is just a yellow box with, again, text and another text box.
What's the difference of those softwares?
What's the difference of the software?
Yeah, I think they always the posters, so they have similar functions as
As Illustrator?
like the AI and the ID.
Okay, so Illustrator is more geared towards the vector. So it's limited in terms of laying out tons and tons of text. This obviously we can do multiple pages, we can do multiple spreads, we can have pages and pages of text and then be able to look at them and kind of create that very cohesive and kind of flowing presentation. Whereas Illustrator, you're focusing kind of on a logo or a series of shapes that you can then save and bring into this program if you wanted to. Yeah. And again, the program's fantastic. I love using Illustrator because I work with type constantly, or I want to create shapes that I can scale up and down any size in any program. So creating vectors is super important to my practice as a designer and many others. And then I just wanted to show you guys this because I know this class was about a poster, but I mean, the idea was to make a poster at the end, but I thought that this was a great way to show you how content can continue in other forms. So I'm taking the same idea from the original poster, and this is the same size text boxes. This is the same kind of image. It could be like portraits. This could be bios. Like I put team up here, so imagine you make 3 different images in Photoshop, portraits of your team members. These are your bios, and it has the same kind of aesthetic and palette type and content structure as the previous poster. So this is how you can start creating an identity for a presentation. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I'd like everybody to do is I'm gonna turn the lights on for a few minutes. I'd like you to take out a piece of paper and come up with an idea for a poster. I saw that you had one that you were doing, it was like for a movie night. So if you wanted to, for example, you might want to do a workshop for the summer with some of your students. So if you wanted to set up a document to do a workshop with, sketch it out on a piece of paper. Figure out what those modes of content are. Actually, I'll create just like, because I have new dry erase markers. So this is kind of the first step. So first you want to list your content. So what is it? If there is a date and a time, when, where, content, additional info. Now, this poster might not be for, it doesn't have to be for an event. Let's take a look back at the very beginning, oops, which I went backwards. When I presented these campaign posters. So it could be for a campaign, so that would change what the content is, right? Then it would be like, what is it? Description. How do I learn more? So you're going to identify what you're building right here. And this is, you don't have to think too hard about it. It can be something fun. This is just for the sake of organizing content today. So figure out what your content is. And then from there, we're going to, I think it's the board. I don't think it's these markers. From there, we're going to address the principles of design. We're going to address typography. We're going to address palette and image. So if you want to take out a piece of paper and spend the next, let's see what time it is. It is 12:23. Spend the next 10 minutes kind of sketching out an idea. I'm going to work with you guys individually to actually make your poster, which is how we'll leave here today, with some sort of completed version of you organizing content. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I'm going to bring up Photoshop. But first I'll ask you, is this supposed to be teach tool? So if I just capture and measure this person go down and extract.
Yes, so you do that in Photoshop.
But I'm going to Photoshop. That's kind of difficult because it's like...
Well, you would do it with the eraser tool. The other thing you could do is watch this. So, object.
Doing this one?
There should be an edit original.
I wish to do it in Photoshop.
Yeah, no, you're going to do it in Photoshop. Edit. Let's see, edit original. Oh, it brings it up in preview. Yes, open it up in Photoshop. You have to go.
Yes, I'm going.
Okay, no problem. Good luck. Do you want to take your stuff with you? Or?